Hello, it's Michael Angelo Caruso. Welcome back to another Talk to Me podcast episode. I'm thrilled to be with you. I appreciate your time. We've got a great episode for you today. My guest is Jeff Ferguson from the East Coast. Hi, Jeff.
Good morning, Michael. How are you today?
I'm great, thank you. Jeff is the host of Shore Perspectives on WCTR Radio, which has evolved into a podcast. My gosh, if you're going to do any kind of audio recording, you might as well do a podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff's going to share his expertise on how he puts together really good interviews. And I know this from experience because I was interviewed by Jeff on WCTR for an upcoming event I'm doing in Maryland. Before we do that, I want to thank you for listening and watching. If you're looking at this on YouTube, thank you so much. We appreciate the likes, the comments, and most of all, the shares. That's what helps the station or the YouTube channel grow. Thank you very much for your endorsement and passing it along to your friends. Jeff Ferguson is here from WCTR. I am impressed with your interviewing skills, sir. That's why I asked you to be on my program.
Well, you're very, very flattering and complimentary. It's interesting how this all came about.
Yeah, I'm
A couple
grateful. We'll
of,
give everybody the backstory in just a second. I'm interviewed many times by people who are unprepared. They have no rapport with me. They try to develop in real time. I'm quick on my feet, and it sometimes goes well, but there's just nothing like good preparation. A quick little fun story about the actual detail that goes into this type of thing. I found out by accident. Do you remember Terry Gross, Jeff? She used to host Fresh Air on NPR.
I know the name, yes.
She's retired now, but
Hmm.
she's written a couple books about, she hosted for decades. And I always thought like she was it doesn't matter if you're an NPR fan or not, she was like the top of the pyramid in terms of interview skills and the guests that she got and the quality of her programming and all that. And I found out rather late in the game that almost everything in her interview is edited, including the gap between when she asked the question and the interviewee answered the question, because sometimes there's some dead air.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a little stumble about
Mhm.
while the person's finding their answer. And she had a crew that was editing all that stuff out, which is why she was at the top of her pyramid. It's why her interviews were so slick.
Mm.
That's a level of preparation.
That is. With me, it's what you see is, or what you hear is what you get.
Yeah, and I think there is a trend toward that with Rogan and some of these long form guys. Like he doesn't even bother with an introduction. He just starts talking to the guest. He didn't use any. I used some adjectives to describe you today. He doesn't use adjectives. He just says, here we are." But then again, his guests are these premium celebrities who you probably know them just by their first name.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. You and I go about this a different way. We're kind of old school. That's why I wanted to talk to you today. And you come into this gift uh, through a curation process, I think, through your life in the business world. You did some amazing things as a businessman. You're retired now.
I am.
You have a long history with Marriott. Tell us about that.
Well, I had the pleasure at Marriott of being the CEO of the senior living business when they were in it. And I had the opportunity to work with some wonderful people, had a chance to interact with Bill Marriott, who I think is one of the real true business leaders that we've had over the last number of decades.
Bill is the
And
second generation Marriott, yeah?
he is, he is.
Okay.
The company was founded by his father, and Bill took it over.
Yeah. And so
And
give everybody a scope of you make it sound like you were running a little shop in one of the hotels. Give everybody a sense of the scope of senior living manager. How many units? How do you talk
um,
about that? How many
we were in
people?
32 different states. It was slightly under $1 billion in revenues, and 156 properties. They range from assisted living with many of them with a skilled nursing unit or a memory care unit, as well as continuing care retirement centers.
I
And
mean, the reason I ask that is I'm a Marriott guy, when I travel, and I'm always astounded at how many tentacles this organization has. Like, I didn't know they were in senior living until you told me when we first got to know each other.
well, no longer.
Oh,
My job was to really economically fix, improve, and they ultimately ended up selling the business then to Sunrise.
What year did they sell it?
They sold it back in 2003.
So they're going to miss the whole baby boomer thing. All of us are getting of age now. You
Well,
won't even be able to
what
use
they've done,
Marriott's senior living
if
services.
you've looked at the company since that time, what they've done is they've really enhanced their whole portfolio of hotels, and they have a myriad of brands, but they've gotten wider and deeper into the hospitality space in their hotels.
Yes.
And they've really taken extraneous businesses that don't relate directly to hospitality in the hotel side and gotten rid of them.
It's surprising, these large companies, they develop such a footprint that they can take advantage of it in different ways. For example, Marriott can issue its own credit card and then partner with the airlines to give you a much better arrangement than you could get it on your own.
I'm a loyal Marriott credit card holder and have been for many years.
Yeah, yeah. And so when you were doing Marriott Senior Living, you must have been doing some interviewing. I'll tell you my take on interviewing in just a minute, but the traditional definition of interviewing is say you were interviewing people for jobs. Did you have some experience with that?
Quite a bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Um, really bringing in new people, new leaders for the executive team
yeah.
there that worked with me. And I did some, because I was running the business, I also had opportunities to be interviewed on radio and television. And
Oh,
I
that's
did some
right. Yeah.
internal,
Be interviewed. That's right.
I also had an opportunity to host and do some internal audiovisual training programs inside the company since we had such a geographic dispersion to the organization.
I'm with you. I learned just as much from being interviewed as I do from interviewing.
Until I took the show on, I was always the interviewee instead of the interviewer.
Ah,
So I changed chairs and went across the table in doing this show.
it's like looking in a window pane from the opposite side.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. Did you have a magic question? I call it a magic question that got interviewees in the job interview to open up to you? Because you can ask, where do you, those trite cliche questions, where do you see yourself in 5 years? What's your biggest strength? What's your biggest weakness? I never found those questions to be particularly useful. Did you have a magic question that you could ask to get people to really open up to you and show you their true selves?
And you might call it a trick question, but I always like to ask someone that I was interviewing, what's the best book you've read lately? And why
Ah,
is it good?
so
And
many
what did
things
you
to
learn
learn
from
from
that
that.
book? Because the way that our environment is today, um, the doubling rate of our knowledge is compressed so much that unless you're committed to be a lifelong learner, you will find that your skills are no longer appropriate for
Yes.
today's marketplace. And so I always wanted to know how engaged this person was and would be in learning new concepts and new ideas.
And reading being a great way to learn. If you
Yeah.
asked, what book have you read or what book are you reading, and there's a stumble about,
And I can remember one interview that I had, guy mentioned the book. I had read it. And I could tell after, I asked him what were the important takeaways from his reading of the book, and he hadn't read it. He
oh,
knew the title. And I thought, you're
oh,
done. That's it. You know, you're not getting any further. If you can't be truthful about a book, you're not going to be truthful about a lot of other things either.
excellent. Yeah. I remember, I think it was J.C. Penney. He took the story is, it sounds like almost like an urban legend, but I like the story, that he would take candidates to lunch. And if they salted their food before they tasted it, he didn't hire them
Hmm.
because they were prejudging. They were too reflexive in their eating habits, which meant maybe they would be too reflexive in their management habits. My
I
point
had
is, he
the
didn't ask them a
opportunity.
question at all. He just observed them and figured it out somehow.
I had the opportunity to work with a fellow by the name of Chuck Dupree, whose father is or was Max Dupree. Max is long deceased now. but he wrote a number of books on leadership.
Okay.
And when Tom Peters wrote In Search of Excellence years ago, Max Dupree was one of the corporate leaders that he mentioned because of he was a deep thinker. And it wasn't just I'm running this business. I'm thinking deeply about the business and the people that I'm asking to run various segments and parts of it. But it was a real pleasure to sit down and have the opportunity to meet Max Dupree years ago.
Love it. When you interviewed me for WCTR, I was taken by the fact that you would not be put off to just an email exchange, setting up the call. And in fact, you didn't want to just set up the call. You wanted to have a pre-interview. That's what I called it. Do you call it
Mhm.
something else?
I always like to get to know the people if
Yeah,
I
get to
don't know
know.
them ahead of time.
Yeah.
And in fact, this afternoon I have two calls that I'll be making to do exactly that for future interviews
Yes.
with people. And from my initial meetings and conversations that I have with people, it helps me in doing my research on both the subject matter and that person so that I can generate some questions that I provide to them ahead of time so that they know what the interview is going to be about. And this is, I found very useful, especially for people that have never done an interview before on radio or
Yeah.
podcast.
It's genius. And there, there's a time management and a connection issue in an interview. If the interview is only 20 minutes, you can't wait till minute 6 to actually connect with the person. It's good to hit the ground running. I booked a gig this morning, and the lady had told me in the previous call, because I like to do a couple calls before I actually book the gig.
Hmm.
I want to identify the problems and get to know and make sure I'm a
Yeah.
fit for the organization. So we had already had one call. And in this call this morning, I told her, hey, I watched the video of the guy that you had speak last year. And I went on to explain that, to ask her more about what she thought of him. So I had a little
Hmm.
baseline for what she appreciated in a speaker. And she said, well, one thing about this guy is that he has a kind of a performative speaking style. And it took our audience a little bit of time to understand what he was doing. I think she said something like 5 or 6 minutes. Well, the
Hmm.
keynote was only 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So that meant he burned a good percentage of his opening time bringing the audience to him, his style. Whereas if he might have known the style in advance, they could connect almost like ET at minute 1. I
Sure.
think that's what we want to do in interviews. We don't need this warm up, ramp up, earn trust, establish rapport because it wastes time. What do you think?
I think it's so important to do the pre-work. That pre-work is including what we're talking about, as well as the research that you do behind the scenes, um, finding more out so that you can become and ask better questions, a better interviewer and ask better questions.
You
Let me
bet.
tell you a story. Uh, this is last year. I'm interviewing a guy who's an expert in environmental cleanups. And we specifically were talking about how do you remediate mold issues and problems? Really dull. And during a break, when I cut for a commercial, I said, share some stories about what happened, what you saw, what you had to do, and how you did it. Because the audience wants to hear stuff like that. You can give them data and you can give them scientific background on things, but what they really want to hear is what you were capable of doing and how you went about your job
And you
and
kind of
you can
whispered that
liven
to
things up.
you whispered that to him on the break.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then when you came back, he complied and
Oh,
provided that
yeah.
story.
And when we came back, I said, tell us about such and such. You briefly mentioned an event that you were involved in the cleanup. Tell us how you went about doing it and what was
Brilliant,
the end result.
brilliant. I think that's something that people can learn from you as well, is that it's not just that one preparatory call. You can make adjustments to this, especially if you've got breaks. Like your WCTR interview, that the one you did with me, there were three
Three
or four
breaks.
breaks.
Hmm.
Station identification. You like to record in 15 or 12-minute segments um, as per the instructions you receive from the station, I assume.
That's right. What happens is I do my interviewings during the week. My show runs on Sunday mornings, and then it goes on Spotify and other podcasting sites on Mondays. But uh, when I do those segments, I stay within a certain time bound. And when I send the segments then into the station, they add the pre and the post show music. They put the commercials in where I've stopped our interview for a break from the sponsors.
Yeah. And once you, as an interviewer, everybody, once you find your stride with this, you can actually make these requests even in real time. So let's say the interviewer says something like, he's not giving you the story that you want. As an interviewer, you can say, well, tell us a story about that. Do you have a success
Exactly.
story? You don't need to wait for a break to do it if your
Mhm.
format doesn't have any breaks. Like on my podcast, there is no breaks. I don't even edit, Jeff. No editing in this one, man. If you make a
Yeah.
mistake, we're going to fix it. If I mispronounce something, you're going to fix it in real time for me, and that's how real conversation goes. It just happens to be how I do it.
Hmm.
But I think that as interviewers, we have a responsibility to keep the quality standard high for listeners. I mean, we're these days, there's a that phrase mainstream media. These days, we're all mainstream media. I'm for my following, I'm mainstream. For your following, you're mainstream. And we have an obligation to them not to waste their time. And I think your careful preparation goes a long way toward that.
My attitude is everybody is an interesting person. And my
Yes.
job as an interviewer is to find out where and what interests them and what makes them an interesting person.
Yeah.
And I have a phrase that I came up with that you've seen, and that is, if I'm not interested, then neither are you. What I mean by that is if I don't project any interest in the person, the listener isn't either, and the listener's going to turn the show off.
Yeah. I like what you said. Let's talk more about that. I have a different spin on everybody's an interesting person. I agree with it, but I think some people are more interesting than others. And
True.
I use that second part to dial in who would be a good guest on my show. Now, according to your theory, if everybody's interesting, that means everybody's a good candidate to be interviewed on your show. Do you believe that?
No, but I
Ah,
think everyone is interesting,
okay.
is an interesting person. That doesn't mean they're going to be appropriate for the show.
Excellent. So tell us how you decide. Here you are talking to five interesting people that are candidates for the show. Who makes the cut?
Um, I'm also looking for people that have done interesting things.
Hmm.
Let me give you an idea. Just two people that were one that I interviewed a number of months ago, who is a retired CIA agent who worked for four different presidents as a Middle East advisor. And the
Wow.
gist of our interview was about in 1999, he was the lead US negotiator with Pakistan that averted a nuclear war between Pakistan and India.
Whoa.
And this was when he worked for Bill Clinton.
Wow.
That was a fabulously interesting interview. I have one coming up in 2 weeks, and I'm going to be talking with a lady who worked for 12 years as an FBI profiler. And
That's going to be good.
she's a PhD psychologist, and she'll be able, and I've met her, I know her. Um, she'll be a really interesting, fascinating interview. Um,
I
Another
like it.
person is, and sometimes you find out things about people that you don't know ahead of time.
Yeah.
No, so uh, WCTR is in Chestertown, Maryland. It's the home of Washington College, which is a small arts and science college. So I wanted to interview the athletic director to talk about how NIL is changing the landscape of collegiate athletics, even at the Division III level. And then I found out, oh, by the way, his side job for the last 10 years is every Baltimore Ravens home game, he sits in the NFL box with an orthopedic surgeon and a neurosurgeon to decide what players need to come out of the game and go to the concussion protocol tent and how they identify those players. That was fantastic. But sometimes you get a surprise like that you don't know what else the person is involved in.
Yeah, and so for those of you keeping score at home and trying to decide who's going to be a good guest for your podcast, an easy one is past achievements.
Hmm.
A second easy one is title, if they've got an impressive title. One that I like to play with is future achievements because it's easy to, the best time they meet a future president of the United States is before they become president on the campaign trail. Because they'll meet everybody. You stand by the door, they'll shake your hand on the way out, and you could say you
That's
met
right.
the president, right? You didn't meet him when he was president, but you met the president.
Hmm.
And an example of that is I interviewed a guy named Rob Lawless, Lawless. It's an interview in my playlist on YouTube for my podcast. Rob is on his way to meeting 10,000 people. I think the campaign is called 10,000 Friends or 10K Friends, something like that. And it's such an interesting assignment because he talks to each of these people for 1 hour. I think I have the numbers right.
Yeah.
And he can't know you in advance. He must speak with you for an hour. And then at the end, he can check his box and say, I have a new friend.
Huh.
And after he does his 10K campaign and the book comes out and the movie comes out, it's going to be impossible to interview this guy. But he told me I was friend number 4,268 or whatever.
But you're on the list.
So my point is, if you can get to people as on their way to achieving something great, it's a fantastic guest slot. I was impressed with the questions, the questions you prepared in advance. It seemed like you were vetting the questions with me initially in our first call.
Yeah.
Then you emailed them to me and said, is this okay? Which I liked.
I always give the interviewee the opportunity to say, don't ask me that. I don't want to talk about that on the air. Or I think you should add this. I always
Yes.
give them that opportunity.
And that worked out great because then when it was time for us to do the interview, I had the printout list of questions, which by the way was in the same order. The questions you asked me were in the same order they were on the page. But I found I didn't even look at it because I
Hmm.
knew exactly what was going to happen. I was 100% comfortable with everything that was happening. No surprises.
Yeah.
Somebody said recently, and I don't remember who it was, they said, a surprised guest is not a good guest.
I said that in the paper that I wrote.
Was it you?
Yeah.
Jeff is also writing about this topic. He's really dedicated to helping people become better at this. I think probably you are about to step into some future accomplishments, maybe even a book, sir. Yep.
I've written a number of articles in the past, nothing of late since I'm quote unquote retired. But this really has hit my hot button as far as what have I learned and what can I pass along to somebody else that may be wanting to get into this game and do the
Yeah.
same thing.
Well, it's not only your hot button, you're good at it. What do you have a pet question that you find yourself coming back to, similar to the pet question when you were doing job interviews, conducting job interviews back in the day? Do you have a pet question now that seems to be like your Swiss Army knife? It's just an all-purpose kind of a thing that
I do.
works with people?
I have begun working for the last number of months. At the end of every interview, I ask the person that I'm interviewing if there's one thought or one takeaway that you would like the listening audience to remember about our conversation today, what would that be?
Ah,
And I'm using that with virtually everybody. And I'm finding that people want to talk about that.
yeah. And plus, it's a good wrap up. It almost becomes a signature piece for you.
Mhm.
Like Carol Burnett used to sign off by tugging her ear, remember? I'm so glad we had this time together. You know, I like it. And you're right. I can see and imagine people opening up. Is there one thing that you need people to take away from this? Love it. What about interviewers that you aspire to? Interviewers that you find interesting that do it for you? This can be from the past, it can be current.
Well, two people that I always had tremendous respect for as interviewers were Tim Russert on Meet the Press. I thought
Yes,
he was really good. And what I liked about him was he was a straight up down the line. He'd have these politicians on, and it didn't matter whether they were an R or a D. He would be just as tough on both of them. Ask him
yes,
those probing questions.
yes.
Other that I always liked for a different reason was Bill Bennett. Now he's former Secretary of Education, um, very, very bright guy. I've read a number of his books that he's written. And what I liked about his interview show, and I used to listen to it when I was going to work in the mornings, um, was he got into a good discussion. Too many times the interviews on especially cable TV, you get the person spouting bumper sticker slogans, and it lasts all of 2 minutes, and then you say, "Okay, we've got to cut for a break."
Yeah.
Um, where where Bennett would say, well, "Let's talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah.
Let's get into this subject. How did you arrive at this conclusion?" And I really appreciated uh, the approach that both those gentlemen took.
I remember both of them. I remember Russert better. And I don't know if you, I think you use the word probing, but you can use similar terminology, hard hitting. Both of them very direct, but never rude.
Right.
There's a casualness, and there's like an undercurrent of rage and outrage. Outrage is probably a better word. Outrage in the interviewer's tone about, and this adversarial relationship between us, whoever us is, and them, whoever them is. Typically, the guest is on the side of the interviewer. It's already been laid out. Back to R&D again. And I don't like that. I find it limits conversation when you only talk to like-minded people, and when you have to villainize somebody else in order to make your point. I don't appreciate that. I liked that Russert and Bennett didn't do it.
My former administrative assistant knew that I really, really liked Tim Russert. She happened to go when he was still alive to a book signing. He had written a book, Big Russ and Me,
Yes.
and she got me a copy of the book and had him autograph it addressed to me.
Oh,
And she presented that to me many years ago.
lovely. Is Bennett still around?
He is, but he's pretty well up there in age now, and I don't think he's doing anything in a public way.
Yeah. Who else in the contemporary world do you admire or find yourself listening to more often than not?
Well, you know, having an MBA and going and spending a lot of time in business, I love Stuart Varney. I used to watch Stuart when he was on CNN years ago, and he's been with Fox Business for about the last 12 or 13 years. So when
Okay.
he went to Fox Business, I followed him. And when I have an opportunity, I either record or watch his shows. I really like Stuart. He's a Brit by background. I believe he went to the London School of Economics, came and immigrated to the US, been here about 50 years, and he just, I think last year, or maybe it was 2 years ago, became a US citizen.
Based on what you've been talking about for the last few minutes, I'm guessing that Stewart is also even-handed and not performative in his interviews.
Um, he is, but he's a pretty conservative guy though too.
Okay. So how did he end up on move from CNN to Fox? Did he change parties as well? Did he change everything?
No, I don't think so. But I used to w- watch Lou Dobbs and Stuart Varney when they were on CNN. I'm going back in the 90s. That shows, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
those were two, and Lou Dobbs was in fact, I heard him give a talk when he was active. Of course, he's deceased now,
Yeah.
but he is a Harvard graduate, majored in economics, and that's where he got on the CNN business side of things, and then also was on Fox Business for a number of years.
Lou changed his tone, I felt, later in life. He became a bit meaner, a bit less predictable at the microphone. I'm not sure it shined well. Do you remember that as well or
I
no?
was going to say that you're right. he became a little more strident, um, where before he could talk in a little more neutral way.
Yeah.
And I think one of the reasons that Fox let him go was he became too far onto one side.
Yeah. And here we are kind of assessing other people's styles. You got to find the style that works for you, everybody. Just because I like neutrality and I like to work both sides of the aisle, politically speaking, doesn't mean that that's the way you want to go. Some of our
Yeah,
most successful interviewers are quite right-leaning or left-leaning.
yeah.
So you have to find your sweet spot. Sometimes it's determined by your employer. Does WCTR put any guardrails up for you, Jeff?
I went in and I told the owner of the station, Brian Moore, that understand I absolutely believe in being politically neutral,
Mm,
and I don't want to sponsor on the show people that are too far off to either side of the political spectrum. And I want the show to be more informative, educational, and perhaps even entertaining, but I don't want to get identified uh, for one political side or the other.
I think it's smart. I like you for that if nobody else does.
Hey, I'm an old guy, so I don't care.
It's Jeff Ferguson, everybody. He's got a terrific radio show. It airs on Sunday morning on WCTR. You can live stream it from the website and also on Spotify. WCTR, the show is called Shore Perspectives, plural, correct?
Yes, and the reason short perspectives, there was a show before, and I changed the name. I told Brian I didn't like the name of the show, and we came up with the idea of short perspective since we're on the eastern shore of Maryland.
Oh, yeah.
But I've taken the show. I did a show down in Hilton Head. I did a show up in Wilmington. I've done a show on the shores of Lake Erie last week.
All
I
right.
was up in Cleveland.
Another
So
nice twist
I,
is
I broadened the term of short perspectives.
I like it, and it allows you to access. I'm sure you did that for a good reason. Either you had to be in that town and you didn't want to miss your rotation, or there was access to a guest there that you couldn't have gotten any other way. Very creative. Well, it's nice to talk with you, Jeff. I'm coming to town. I look forward to meeting you and hopefully breaking bread if we can work that out. Where can people reach you, sir? You have an email address you want to share?
I do. I have an email that people, if they want to get a hold of me, it's wctr.JeffFerguson, all strung together. It's JeffFerguson @gmail.com.
wctr.jeffferguson@gmail.com. That's how they can reach you.
That's right.
Very good. It's Jeff Ferguson from WCTR's Shore Perspectives. Thank you for all your expertise and for teaching us how to do better interviews. We need more quality interviews in the world, and you are leading the way, sir.
Well, Michael, thank you very much for having me on with you today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I look forward to seeing you when you're over here on the Eastern Shore.
Thank you, sir. See you then.
All right.